What happens when a man who once held the world in his hands and walked away with a check that would be worth $40 million today chooses to simply disappear? We are going inside the quiet 2026 world of boxing legend Michael Spinks. At 69 years old, Spinks is a ghost in the sports world, living a life that stands in jarring contrast to the super fight era he helped build. Most people remember Michael Spinks for just 91 seconds, the night Mike Tyson destroyed him. But what almost nobody knows is that the real tragedy of Michael Spinks' career didn't happen in that ring. It happened years later, when tens of millions of dollars quietly vanished. Today, we're looking past the old graining footage to explore his lifestyle in 2026, his recent surprise marriage in New York City, and the truth about how a $100 million legacy shifted into a much more humbling reality. This is the story of the Invisible King and the mystery of what really happened to his fortune. If you're ready to uncover the untold story, hit that like button and subscribe. This is one you won't want to miss. By 1988, the boxing world was split in two. On one side stood the undefeated heavyweight champion Michael Spinks, the man who had never been solved, a cerebral puzzle in a brutal game. On the other stood the most feared knockout artist on the planet, Mike Tyson. By this time, Tyson had become more than a champion. He was a cultural phenomenon and a source of pure, unadulterated terror. Fighters didn't just lose to him. They collapsed under the psychological pressure before the first punch was even thrown. Michael Spinks was the last undefeated heavyweight champion standing in Tyson's path, and their clash, billed as once and for all, was the ultimate showdown of power versus strategy. Tyson had knocked out 19 of his previous opponents inside just 3 rounds, stalking his prey with a predatory intensity that seemed to drain the confidence out of his rivals. Negotiations were so tense, they nearly collapsed over Spinks' demand for a $15 million guarantee, a reflection of his savvy understanding that he was putting his health and legacy on the line against a wrecking ball. In the end, he walked into the ring for a staggering $13.5 million guaranteed flat purse. In today's money, that's nearly $40 million for less than 2 minutes of work, the highest per second earning in the history of the sport at the time. But that knockout isn't the real reason Michael Spinks disappeared. While his opponent, Iron Mike, would go on to earn and lose over $300 million in a whirlwind of Ferraris, mansions, and tigers, Spinks was always different. He was reserved, practical, and deeply scarred by the volatility of fame he had witnessed through the tragic downward spiral of his brother, Leon. In 1978, Leon had shocked the world by beating Muhammad Ali, only to lose his fortune and health in a haze of partying and poor management. While Leon's face was on every tabloid, Michael was quietly saving. He watched Leon go from the top of the world to working as a janitor at a YMCA and a McDonald's in his later years, and he vowed not to repeat those mistakes. Together, Michael and Leon Spinks made history as the first brothers in boxing history to both hold the heavyweight crown, a record that stood for decades until the Klitschko era. But where Leon was the fire, burning bright and fast, Michael was the ice, calculating every move with cold, mathematical precision. He watched the Sharks circling the ring and decided early on that he wouldn't be their next meal. To understand how Michael Spinks went from a $40 million payday to fighting court battles over missing millions, we have to go back to where his story began. That foundation wasn't built in luxury. It was built in the infamous Pruitt-Igoe housing projects of St. Louis. It was a place where survival was the only goal, a concrete labyrinth of crime and poverty where the Spinks brothers learned to fight just to walk to school safely. In 1976, Michael and his brother Leon did something that had never been done before. 2 brothers winning Olympic gold in the same year. Leon took the gold at light heavyweight, while Michael secured his at middleweight, defeating Rufat Rizkiv of the Soviet Union in a brutal final. It was a feat of pure willpower, the first time siblings had stood on the highest podium together in the same sport. While Leon rocketed to fame, Michael took a different, more grounded path. He actually returned to St. Louis after the Olympics and took a job at a chemical factory, scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets for a meager wage. He wasn't ashamed of the manual labor. He was a man who prioritized family and stability over the ego of a champion. He watched Leon's chaotic rise and the hangers-on that followed from the sidelines until he realized that the ring was his only true ticket out of the cycle of poverty. He didn't turn pro for the glory. He turned pro as a business decision to ensure his mother would never have to worry about a bill again. As a pro, he became a puzzle nobody could solve. Before jumping to heavyweight, he cleaned out the light heavyweight division, ruling through 10 world-class defenses against elite operators. He was an architect of the ring, perfecting the Spinks Jinx, an awkward, stuttering rhythm that used uneven footwork and deceptive shoulder rolls to keep opponents guessing. He would step in at strange, jarring angles, moving his upper body in a way that made him impossible to time. This manipulation of boxing geometry created openings for his devastating crossover right hand, a punch that carried heavyweight power with the surgical precision of middleweight. He didn't just hit hard. He hit when you weren't ready, exploiting the microseconds of confusion his movement created. Today, boxing historians and researchers at organizations like IBRO and BoxRec rank Michael Spinks among the top 10 greatest light heavyweights of all time. Some place him in the top 5, alongside legends like Archie Moore and Ezid Charles, noting that he is the only undisputed light heavyweight champion in history to never lose a single fight in that weight class. He beat absolute killers like Marvin Johnson, Yaki Lopez, and Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, men who would be multi-millionaire superstars in today's social media era. In 1985, he used that jinx to do the unthinkable. He challenged the Easton assassin, Larry Holmes. Holmes had ruled the heavyweight division for nearly a decade. With a record of 48-0, he was one victory away from tying Rocky Marciano's legendary 49-0 mark. No light heavyweight champion in history had ever successfully moved up to take the heavyweight crown. 13 had tried and 13 had failed, including legends like Archie Moore and Bob Foster. But Michael outthought the legend. He refused to fight Holmes' fight, circling, jabbing, and disrupting the champion's rhythm for 15 grueling rounds. When the final bell rang and the judges awarded Spinks the decision, the heavyweight division had been turned upside down. It remains one of the greatest upsets in boxing history, a night when a blown-up technician broke the heart of an era. But the moment that truly changed Spinks' life had nothing to do with boxing. It happened on a dark, rain-slicked road in January 1983. At the height of his powers, tragedy struck when his 24-year-old wife, Sandy Massey, was killed in a car accident. He was left as a grieving single father to a 2-year-old daughter, Michelle. Incredibly, just 2 months after his wife's death, a heartbroken Spinks stepped into the ring against Dwight Muhammad Qawi for that undisputed title. The night was heavy with more than just sports tension. Stories from the locker room tell of a devastating moment where a 2-year-old Michelle asked her father if her mother would be coming to watch the fight. Fighting through that unbearable, fresh grief, Michael somehow found the strength to dominate the 15-round match. He didn't just win a belt that night. He proved he possessed a level of internal fortitude that few humans ever reach. This is the part of the story most people miss. Spinks didn't fade away after the Tyson fight because he was broken by the knockout. He disappeared because he had a daughter to raise and a promise to keep. He chose the quiet responsibility of school runs, homework, and dance recitals over the chaos of boxing politics. He moved to Wilmington, Delaware, into a traditional suburban home he purchased in 1985 for $316,000. While other champs were building gold-plated palaces, he was building a sanctuary for his child. He became a fixture in his local community, not as the champ, but as Michelle's dad, a man who preferred the anonymity of a suburban backyard to the flashing bulbs of Las Vegas. Even at the height of his career, you wouldn't find Michael in a fleet of Rolls-Royces or Lamborghinis. While modern stars like Mayweather flaunt private jets and diamond-encrusted watches, Michael's greatest luxury was a sense of security. He drove sensible cars and kept his circle tight, avoiding the entourages that bled so many of his peers dry. However, Millions have a way of thinning out over 40 years of retirement, especially when you trust the wrong people with your life's work. By 2026, experts estimate Spinks' net worth has settled into a range between $200,000 and $500,000. It is a sobering reminder that in the game of boxing, the final bell doesn't just end the fight. It often marks the beginning of a long financial retreat. But what happened next would quietly destroy his fortune. As we look at how he lives in 2026, Michael Spinks' lifestyle is defined by quiet dignity. He still lives in that same Delaware home, now a sprawling 7,000 square foot estate valued at nearly $2 million, which he owns outright. This property is his greatest financial victory, a fortress that has protected him even as his liquid assets dwindled. After his longtime promoter and manager Butch Lewis passed away in 2011, Spinks discovered something shocking. The $100 million legacy he thought he had secured was largely a mirage of mismanagement. A massive lawsuit followed against the estate of Butch Lewis and other associates, alleging that over $24 million of Spinks' career earnings have been mismanaged or diverted. The details were harrowing. Spinks claimed that while he thought he was set for life, his manager had been using Michael's funds for personal expenses and had even allowed Michael's health insurance policies to lapse. At one point, nearly $50,000 in monthly bills were going unpaid, while Spinks was under the impression his finances were secure. This betrayal of a decades-long brotherhood was a punch far more damaging than any he took from Tyson. It forced Michael into a position where he had to manage his resources with extreme care, living on his pension and the equity of his home. Yet, you will never hear him complain. In 2026, the physical toll of his 32 pro fights and years of grueling training is evident. He suffers from significant joint pain and the typical wear and tear that comes with being a former heavyweight champion. His gait is slower, and he deals with the lingering physical consequences of being a small heavyweight who had to bulk up to face giants. Yet, despite the financial blow and physical health struggles, he never let it break his spirit. On January 6th, 2026, at age 69, Michael stepped back into a different kind of spotlight. He married his longtime partner and publicist, Florence Anthony, in a private ceremony in New York City. The two had dated since 1987, and their union was a testament to his loyalty. Today, he remains one of the most private champions in history. When he does appear at boxing events or Hall of Fame gatherings, fans are often surprised by how humble and approachable he remains. He walks quietly through the crowd, greeting supporters with the same calm demeanor that defined his fighting style. He doesn't seek the limelight, but when it finds him, he treats it with a gentle, appreciative smile. Ultimately, Michael Spinks is a reminder that a legacy isn't defined by your worst 91 seconds. It's defined by the 40 years that follow. His legacy is officially cemented with his induction into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, alongside his brother. He is a man who took the biggest hits life could throw at him: poverty, the loss of a wife, a public betrayal by his manager, and a devastating knockout. And he stayed standing. He didn't need the flashy cars to feel like a man. He needed peace and the knowledge that he did right by his daughter. He remains a living master of the long game, showing the world that you can lose your fortune and your title, but you can never lose your character. In a sport obsessed with knockouts and fame, Michael Spinks may have pulled off the greatest victory of all, walking away with his peace intact. If you enjoyed this look into the quiet empire of Michael Spinks, hit that like button and subscribe. Does Michael deserve more credit for breaking Larry Holmes's 48-0 streak? Or is the Tyson fight all people will remember? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.